Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about The Salt Grows Heavy. The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw, and this is a Tor Nightfire book. Before I get into this, it's a little behind the scenes. A couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, as of this recording, I went to Barnes & Noble, and I bought 4 brand new books, pretty much brand new, came out within a week or so. And I came home, put them on a stack somewhere, one of the many stacks of books that I have. And generally, I read whatever I'm in the mood for when I can figure that out. But for some reason, I just decided I was going to read as soon as I finished what I was done reading at the time. I was going to just read these 4 books in a row, the order that I happened to put them on the stack. Not something I generally do. Occasionally a brand new book will come out that I'm really excited for, and I'll read that right away. But 4 brand new books, just straight in a row, right after I got them. Very, very rare. Don't know if it's ever happened at all, but anyway, this is the first of those 4. So this video and then the next 3 book review videos are going to be those 4 books that I bought all together at Barnes & Noble. Just thought I would share that for the hell of it. Anyway, let's get to The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. And I think the best thing for me to do is to read the inside flap to you. So, from USA Today best-selling author Cassandra Khaw comes a razor-sharp and bewitching fairy tale of discovering the darkness in the world and the darkness within oneself. You may think you know how the fairy tale goes. A mermaid comes to shore, and weds the prince. But what the fables forget is that mermaids have teeth. And now her daughters have devoured the kingdom and burned it to ashes. On the run, the mermaid is joined by a mysterious plague doctor with a darkness of their own. Deep in the eerie, snow-crusted forest, the pair stumble upon a village of ageless children who thirst for blood, and the 3 saints who control them. The mermaid and her doctor must embrace the cruelest parts of their true natures if they hope to survive. So there you go. That's the inside flap. I'm glad I read that because I didn't know if I should mention the whole the daughters having devoured the kingdom and burned it to ashes part. But that is the first page. The book starts. It's narrated by the mermaid, despite the fact that her tongue has been cut out. But the mermaid is the one telling the story, and it literally starts with the kingdom destroyed and her daughters chewing on some folks. So the mermaid and the plague doctor take off together and etc. You know what the flap says now. I just read it to you. So I have to say, I don't know if I'm maturing. Am I becoming a better human being? I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads, which means I loved it. That's what it says if you hover over the 5-star on Goodreads. And it's not... Cassandra Khaw's writing style is, for lack of a better way to put it, I would say the equivalent of what is called elevated horror in film. To me, that's the best way that I can think to describe it. Sometimes I have to look things up, which is great. Love to learn new things. But the way that they tell the story just grabbed me. It's very short, little tiny thing. Let's see, 106 pages. And I don't know that normally this type of writing would be my thing, but it seems to be something that's growing on me with Paula D. Ashe and Alison Rumfitt are a couple that immediately come to mind that have this, again, for lack of a better way to put it, elevated style that has really spoken to me. I don't know what it is. The story itself, I think, is great. I like the characters. They're intriguing. And it is a horrific tale. There is violence and gore and body horror, as the mermaid and the plague doctor have their adventure, for lack of a better term. I seem to be saying that a lot this video. So it's a really interesting story with interesting characters, and Khaw's writing just hits me just the right way. Excuse me. And regular viewers will know that I talk about how when I'm reading fiction, my main goal is to be entertained. And this book certainly is entertaining, but it's more than that. It's literary. And I feel uncomfortable using these terms, saying elevated horror and literary, because I'm afraid that might feel like I'm denigrating other, like, pulpish horror or other horror, or easier to less verbose horror. But that's not the case at all. I love the way Brian Keene writes, and Edward Lee, and Rath James White, and Hunter Shea, and all of these, these different authors. But for some reason, I don't know. It's just hitting me the right way. I really enjoyed Nothing But Blackened Teeth. I have a few other books by Cassandra Khaw, and it's just really good. It's a great story. There's plenty. I mean, I'm thrilled by the gore and the body horror and stuff, but their writing style just seems to hit the right nerve for me. I was thinking of comparing it to music. I have, my tastes in music are pretty much just as eclectic as my taste in reading, where I'm in reading, I'm not really interested in romance. Music, well, two things. I'm really not that interested in the super pop stuff. There are always exceptions. Not a huge fan of country. There are exceptions. But eclectic taste. And with music, if someone were to ask me why I like certain songs, there are plenty of times where I could say it's the lyrics. I love what they have done lyrically. One of the biggest things I love about Alice Cooper is his horror-laced lyrics. And sometimes I can say, well, it's the music, just the artistry of the musicians, or just these guitar licks, just really fantastic. But there are certain songs that one would not necessarily think, if they knew me, that I would be a fan of, and they might ask me why I like it, and I can't quite explain it. There's just something about the song as a whole that strikes a chord with me, and that's how I feel reading Cassandra Khaw. If any of this makes any sense. Although I can point to things, again, the story, the characters, but there's something else there that typically I don't think people would associate with the type of things I want to read, but it's striking a chord. Their writing somehow is striking a chord. That's the third, fourth time I've said that. again, is it possible I'm maturing and growing? I'd hate to think so, but I suppose it is within the realm of possibility. Anyway, all of that being said, I highly recommend The Salt Grows Heavy. As I said, 5 out of 5 stars. Cassandra Khaw is moving up in my estimation of authors that I absolutely want to read. As I said, I have 2 other of their books, 2 or 3 of their other books, and at this point, I'm looking forward to whatever they're going to put out. I want to see what they do, because so far they're 2 for 2 with me. I actually like this more than Nothing But Blackened Teeth, and I really, really liked that one. So I think I've covered all the salient points. I've rambled, I've repeated myself. So it's a typical video for me, but I highly recommend The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw from Tor Nightfire. Excuse me. So my question for this video is essentially, do you now or have you ever found your tastes changing in a substantial way? This is especially pertinent right now because one of my regular viewers and commenters has mentioned that there has been a huge shift in their reading interests or lack of interest. I'm not going to say anything specific, but it's in the comments. It's out there in the public in the comments of one of my videos. So if you care, you can search for it. But over the years, and I'm not talking about you're an adult now, so you don't read kid books. More along the lines of, I used to be heavily into fantasy. I've always read horror. I've always read pretty much everything, again, except romance. But there was a time when I was really heavy into fantasy, and horror, mysteries, other things, sci-fi were sort of in the mix, but fantasy was a big part of what I was reading. And now it's one of the smaller parts of what I'm reading. I'm picking it up a little bit more, although not getting into the heavy the heavy fantasy. I'm not reading, George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones stuff or Patrick Rothfuss, his books, things like that. I just don't see myself. They're huge. I don't know that I can take the time, for one thing. But I've been picking up a lot of Conan that I haven't read before, and other some horror authors are dipping their toe into fantasy, some thriller, mystery authors writing fantasy, and I'm picking those up, reading a little bit more. But that was kind of a big shift for me, moving away from reading fantasy. And now, apparently, I'm maturing and enjoying some things that I might have. I'll admit, maybe a few years ago, I don't know how far back I need to go, I might have said, no, I didn't like this. I think the author's being pretentious. But I don't. I don't think the author's being pretentious. I think the author has a style, and it's a very good style. So I don't know if this is a shift in what I'm reading. I mean, I doubt it's a huge shift. It's just a small little change. Me enjoying something that I might not have enjoyed a few years ago. I'm not going to suddenly give up reading pulpy, trashy, splatterpunk, over-the-top, crazy stuff and mysteries and sci-fi and all the other stuff that I read. But I'm certainly not going to turn my nose up at something that might be a little more literary, again, for lack of a better term. But what about you? Have you had any of these shifts in what you read? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Hopefully you're still watching, because I've excuse me, I forgot to mention, I got so excited there, I choked myself. I forgot to mention, there's a little short story at the end of this book that's a prequel to the main story. As I said, the main story, the very first page, the daughters of the mermaid have ravaged the kingdom, and there's a short story at the end that tells us the story of the mermaid leading up to that first page. Really fun. I enjoyed that story as well. I don't know if fun is the right word. So hopefully you're still watching and got that little bit of information that I forgot to put in earlier. I believe I'm at the part where I say, please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter at the moment is still at Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That's all I have. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.